So this upcoming season, the Baltimore Ravens will be celebrating 30 years as a franchise, and they've had a pretty successful franchise. They've made the playoffs more than half the time, they've won 2 Super Bowls, they've won multiple AFC North championships. For most expansion teams, or at least technical expansion team, the Ravens didn't get treated like one because they moved from Cleveland to Baltimore, but all in all, they're pretty much an expansion team because they didn't keep the same, records from those Browns teams in the past because they're 2 completely different franchises. They have had more success than not. And I thought to celebrate, why not take a look at not the top 30 games, but the top 10 games in Ravens history. These games in particular had some sort of meaning to them in one way or another, whether the Ravens blew somebody out, won a big close game, or maybe there was just some significance to it. Now, before we get to the actual list, I kind of want to just zip through 5 honorable mentions that I feel like I have to talk about, like these games are worth noting for one reason or another. So without further ado, let's get into those. Yes, 2015 Week 12, the 3-7 Ravens and the 2-8 Browns, a game that, people probably watched because it was Monday Night Football, and what else are you going to do on a Monday night? And the Ravens won this game on the infamous Will Hill kick 6 to avoid being swept by the Browns, and that was one of the Ravens' high moments in a 5-11 season.
And it's blocked. It is picked up by Will Hill. Will Hill runs down the sideline. Hill's going to get a block. Will Hill is going to win the game on a blocked field goal. Unbelievable.
Next is 2012 Week 3, Ravens taking on the Patriots, both teams 1-1, needing this win, and the Ravens fell behind by multiple scores multiple times, but Joe Flacco and Torrey Smith connected for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns, en route to Justin Tucker kicking his first ever game-winning field goal that barely made it in, but it made it in, and the Ravens won 31-30. This is also infamous for Torrey Smith balling out just hours after his little brother had passed away in a motorcycle crash.
Justin Tucker for the win. Whoa, baby! Oh, just good. And the Patriots are saying no.
Oh, Wilford can't believe it.
This next one is pretty significant in a way because it was the Ravens' first really big comeback in their history and also their first win ever against the Jaguars, as after starting 0-8 in the franchise history against the Jags in the 90s, the Ravens came in Week 2 of 2000, obviously the first Super Bowl season, with some hope that maybe they could take the Jags down, and they fell behind 23-7, and it looked like the same old, but good old Tony Banks and that Ravens offense on a day where the Ravens defense had an off day, a very rare day that year. They ended up coming back to win this game 39-36, and Tony Banks became the first Ravens quarterback to throw for 5 touchdowns in a single game.
Banks, he's got a man! Shannon Sharp! Touchdown! Touchdown! Shannon Sharp!
Then I have to mention Week 1 of 2019 in Miami because this was Lamar's first ever Week 1 start, and this kicked off his first MVP campaign as he would go 17-20 for 324 yards passing with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. This was also a day where the Ravens set a franchise record in total yards at 643 and points at 59.
RG3 to a wide open man. It's Mark Andrews. What a day for Andrews.
And then the last honorable mention, Week 14 of 2013, the Ravens playing host to the Vikings in a snowstorm, and with 2:09 left, it was a low-scoring game. The Vikings were leading 12-7, and it looked like another one of those sloppy snow games. But then all of a sudden came the scoring barrage. 5 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes and 9 seconds, which included Joe Flacco hitting Marlon Brown in the back of the end zone with 4 seconds left to give the Ravens a 29-26 win in one of the craziest games I've ever witnessed as a Ravens fan.
Joe Flacco. Back of the end zone. That's Marlon Brown for a touchdown.
All right, there you go. The 5 honorable mentions are out of the way. Now it's time to get into the actual list, and here is the 10th choice. I put this game on here because this was historic for football in Baltimore. It was the Ravens' first ever game. They were playing the Oakland Raiders, which, if you don't know, when the Colts were still in Baltimore, Colts-Raiders was like an instant rivalry. So the NFL pitting the Ravens and Raiders against each other was kind of, intentional, I would say. And the Ravens ended up winning their inaugural game 19-14, doing everything they could to stop the Raiders from scoring while their offense did just enough in a win. And it was an historical day because very rarely do you see expansion teams get a victory that early on in the season, but the Ravens did it.
Testaverde got away for a moment. Now he's going to run with it, and he's got the touchdown.
This next one's kind of interesting because this is a blowout, and the reason I have this on here is because to this day, this is still the biggest blowout in Monday Night Football history, and it belongs to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, sort of similar to that Browns-Ravens game in 2015, this was interesting because the Ravens entered this game at 4-9, the Packers at 3-10, but it's Monday Night Football, people were going to watch, and most people were probably surprised with the outcome. Kyle Bowler had one of his best games ever, and the Ravens put up what at the time was a franchise record 48 points in a 48-3 win. This game was so bad that Brett Favre got benched for a rookie Aaron Rodgers who didn't play much better. It was just a weird game all around, and again, the 45-point victory is still the biggest victory margin in Monday Night Football history.
3rd and 1, and Bowler has it taken away, and it's Thomas who winds up with it after Chad Williams dislodged the football.
The number 8 choice was a big moment for the Ravens in 2011 because without this win, they don't win the AFC North and don't get the number 2 seed in the AFC. But this was huge in the fact that the Ravens had already beaten the Steelers back in Week 1, and the Ravens before this had only swept the Steelers in the season series just once before in 2006. But this time it was in Pittsburgh, and the Steelers came ready to play. After trailing 16-6, they scored 2 TDs to take the lead. But Joe Flacco would lead a 92-yard drive, and after Torrey Smith dropped a pass a couple plays before, he would catch what would end up being the game-winning TD pass in a 23-20 Ravens win, giving them first place in the North, and of course, them and the Steelers would both finish 12-4, but because the Ravens swept them and went 6-0 in the division belonged to the Ravens.
Flacco again protected well. To the end zone he goes, and it's caught for the touchdown by Torrey Smith.
Next, we have a game that, in the end, I guess kind of mattered, but didn't really have any implications. Week 7 of 2010, the Ravens were playing host to the Buffalo Bills, who were winless at this point. That's why it came as a shock that at halftime, the Ravens were trailing the Bills 24-20. Ryan Fitzpatrick was throwing all over this defense, and it seemed like the Ravens could potentially get upset. But they came back to tie it in regulation, and in overtime, Billy Cundiff kicked the game-winning field goal. The Ravens escaped with a 37-34 victory with another game that is one of their biggest in their franchise history when it comes to coming back and winning.
But now the Ravens can end it. This kick could decide it. It's good. It's over. The Ravens come back to win.
Number 6 is significant because this was the Ravens' first ever franchise win against the Patriots, and it came in the playoffs in New England. And this just wasn't any ordinary game. I mean, the Ravens put up 24 points in the first quarter. Flacco completed just 4 passes, and the Ravens ran for almost 300 yards while Tom Brady had his worst playoff performance ever. At least when most people look at his playoff performances, they say that this is his worst one. Sure, he threw a couple TDs, but he had 3 interceptions, lost a fumble. It just wasn't a good day for him, and the Ravens were able to win soundly 33-14.
And would you believe he throws another interception? It's picked by Ed Reed, and you know what he's trying to do.
He's trying to do with it.
He's trying to score, and if he can't score, you know he's going to lateral it.
They practice this in practice all day long. This is a planned play that they do often.
That set up a Ravens field goal.
I had to put the first Super Bowl here somewhere because this signified that the Ravens franchise was here and ready to stay. I mean, 2000 was the first time the Ravens ever made the playoffs, and although they didn't win the division, they got through the playoffs pretty handily, and throughout the whole entire postseason, the defense, which allowed just 165 points all year, allowed just one offensive touchdown in the playoffs. And no, it wasn't in the Super Bowl. The Giants had 7 points because they returned a kick for the touchdown. The defense forced 5 Kerry Collins turnovers and just were smothering him the whole game. The offense did just enough to get the victory 34-7, marking the first time that a championship came to the city of Baltimore since the Orioles in 1983, and the first football-wise since the Baltimore Colts had won Super Bowl V in 1970.
From the 17 is Jermaine Lewis, and Lewis with room to run. Breaks to the outside, to the 45, the 50, down the sideline, and he's going to go!
Number 4 is infamous here because this is our second largest comeback in the history of the team. But in Week 12 of 2003, this was a must-win for the Ravens. They were 5-5, had lost 2 in a row. They were tied for first place in the AFC North, and things were looking kind of grim. Their rookie Kyle Bowler was now out for the season, so Anthony Wright was starting. Little did the Ravens know Anthony Wright was about to have the game of his life. Now, the Ravens did find themselves down by 17 with 6 minutes left, but all of a sudden, because of a couple miracle throws and catches by Wright and Robinson, who, by the way, caught 4 TD passes in this game, the Ravens were able to tie it up, send it to overtime, and in overtime, Matt Stover kicked the game-winning field goal for the Ravens to win 44-41 for one of the more improbable victories, as the Ravens would then end up going on a roll, finishing the year off 10-6, winning the AFC North for the first time and getting to the playoffs.
This one to win it in OT, officially from 42 yards away. And the Ravens have won it.
Here's the other Super Bowl. I put this one higher because it was more memorable in a way. I mean, the Ravens were winning midway through the third quarter 28-6, but the power went out. I guess the NFL was like, let's break the momentum here because we won a good game. And well, the 49ers came back, made it 34-29, but the Ravens made one last goal line stand with Reed, Lewis, and Suggs all on the field together for the last time, and Sam Cook took an intentional safety by the end of it. The Ravens held on to win this game 34-31 for their second Super Bowl title in just their 17th year of existence. Think about that for a second. It took the Ravens 17 years to win 2 Super Bowls when most franchises who have been around for a longer time are still looking for their first. So this was pretty significant as it gave John Harbaugh a Super Bowl win, and Joe Flacco completed one of the best postseasons by a quarterback since probably Joe Montana in 1989.
And he booms this one. That takes the fair catch free kick out of play. And it's Ginn to the 40. Still on his feet at the 50. And the Ravens have won it.
Runner-up for best Ravens game, I had to throw a Lamar Jackson game in here somewhere, and the one that's most memorable to me because I didn't think we could pull it off was our 19-point comeback win against the Colts in Week 5 of 2021 on Monday Night Football on national TV. This is tied for the largest comeback in Ravens history, as the Ravens fell behind 22-3 at one point, and in the fourth quarter they were down 25-9, but a touchdown and 2-point conversion from Jackson to Andrews cut the lead to 8, and then after Calais Campbell blocked a field goal that pretty much would have sealed the game for the Colts, Ravens went down the field again, tied it up, and went into overtime where they would win the toss, and in overtime Jackson hit Hollywood Brown for the game-winning touchdown to win it 31-25. This game is infamous because in this game Lamar Jackson showed off his passing skills, completing 37 of 43 passes, the best completion percentage for anybody who threw the ball over 40 times in a game, while also throwing for a Ravens record 442 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's one of just 2 Ravens QBs to throw for 400 yards in a game, and this was significant because it really showed what Lamar Jackson can do when you surround him with receiving talent.
Second and goal, second in the game. There it is, caught, touchdown.
touchdown, Marquise Brown, and this game is over.
But to me, this game is number one in my heart because of the way it went. I've said this before many times. In games like this, the Ravens usually lose them, but for once, the luck actually went to their side. I mean, this game was back and forth all game. I mean, Trindon Holiday returned 2 kicks for a touchdown. Corey Graham had a pick 6 off of Peyton Manning early in the game. Nobody led by more than 7 points. The game would always seemingly just be tied, or a team would answer back and tie the game after the other team would just score. This was what you call a playoff classic. Joe Flacco, Peyton Manning going neck and neck, and considering too, the Ravens hadn't beaten Peyton Manning since 2001, this was a huge victory. The Ravens beat the Broncos in double overtime, 38-35, the most recent double overtime game in the NFL, where Justin Tucker kicked the game-winning 47-yard field goal in the game's second overtime. After toward the end of the first OT, Corey Graham picked off Peyton Manning again. That set up the Ravens for the game winner. But again, this game is infamous as it is nicknamed the Mile High Miracle, as with just 30 seconds left in the clock running and 1 timeout to boot, Joe Flacco snapped the ball, avoided the sack, and threw it up to Jacoby Jones, who caught the ball and ran it in for a TD to tie the game, and that is what kept us in the game, because if Jacoby Jones doesn't make that catch or Joe Flacco gets sacked and doesn't get that throw off, then we're not coming back to win. But that was just the day where, again, luck was on our side and things changed, and we would go on to then beat the Patriots next week in the championship game and to win our second Super Bowl in franchise history.
Flacco stepping up and throwing deep down the far sideline. Caught into the end zone. Touchdown, Jacoby Jones.
Well, there you have it. Those were the 10 best Ravens games in their history, at least in my opinion. I know there's some other ones on here, like I really wanted to find a way to put the 1996 game against Rams on here, where we won 37-31 in overtime. That was an interesting game, but there just wasn't much to really talk about it when it comes to like importance of it. And there was also other games I considered, like the 18-point comeback against the Cardinals, the 19-point comeback against the Titans, and of course maybe like a game like Joe Flacco's 5 TD pass game where he threw 5 TDs in 16 minutes against the Buccaneers. But I felt like these games in particular were the ones that I wanted to highlight because they're the most memorable in team history for one reason or another, or they play some significance in some way. So that's my list, but I'd really like to hear in the comments below, what are some Ravens games you think are the best in their history that I didn't include on this list? Because again, they've played so many games, they've been around 30 years, and when you're trying to narrow it down to 10, it can be hard, but these are the ones that either I remember or just know from, seeing highlights or it having a name of some sort and whatnot. But yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and until then, I will catch you all in the next one.